It's time for the Iman Report. It is Saturday, July 10th, and we are recapping UFC 264, Poirier versus McGregor 3, and maybe not exactly the way I wanted it to end, but the right guy won when it's all said and done. Dustin Poirier wins the trilogy via doctor stoppage. Yeah, not exactly the way I wanted this fight to end, but it was also obvious, for the sake of argument, if say this did go into round two, Dustin Poirier was starting to take control of this fight. He was starting to dominate Conor McGregor towards the end of the first round. McGregor almost got finished by Poirier at the end of the first round. I think that the leg snap just kind of, more than not, didn't really do anything to change what would have been the inevitable result at this point. Poirier, he's 2 of 3. Is he going to fight Conor again? No. Especially after the post-fight interview, seeing Conor talking shit on his wife and his kids. Ooh. I don't think we ever see Poirier and McGregor fight again. But for Dustin, you beat 2 out of 3 out of McGregor? Yeah, you get a title shot. Definitely. That is what is next for Dustin Poirier, is another title shot against Charles do Bronx Oliveira sometime later this fall, or maybe towards the end of the year. That should be a very fun fight. And Poirier can claim something no other fighter has. He's beaten Conor McGregor twice. Granted, the second one might be a little debatable, but it's not that debatable. He probably would have won it anyways if this fight had continued. So for Dustin, he's going to probably be fighting for UFC gold the next time out against Charles Oliveira. Nothing else need to be said there. As for Conor McGregor, he's a legend. He's going to take some time off of this fight. Maybe he's done fighting for 2021. But he'll be back in But is he finished as a UFC fighter? Time will tell. We don't know yet if his career as a UFC fighter is done or not. But certainly, we'll see. We might see him back in the octagon at some point. And you know what? There's always that trilogy with Nate Diaz waiting for Conor McGregor if he does decide to return back into the octagon. Definitely, he's going to have a long medical suspension coming. What Conor did was very classless, but he's got a big following. He brings the UFC a lot of cash. So he's lost 3 of his last 4 fights, but he is definitely an entertainer. He's a draw to the UFC. He's in no danger of being cut. So as long as he entertains fights, he will certainly have a job in the UFC. Is he going to fight for a title anymore? I highly doubt it. I think his career as a title contender is over, but there's no shame in being a gatekeeper. There's no shame in being a title. At this point, McGregor can go on collecting big checks against Nate Diaz. Maybe he goes up to welterweight, fights somebody like Colby Covington, Jorge Masvidal. His career is nowhere near finished, but as a title contender, his run as a title contender is pretty much, I will say, is over at this point. Now on to the co-main event, where Gilbert Burns beats Stephen Thompson via unanimous decision. Gilbert Burns, this was a great win over a kickboxer. He definitely controlled him with his grappling and was able to control the fight onto the ground. Gilbert Burns solved the kickboxer puzzle in Stephen Thompson. But I also did like the call out for for Gilbert Burns. And I think that is what should be next for Gilbert Burns. Give him a fight against one Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. That would definitely, I think that is definitely a great call out. That is definitely the next fight to make. And it would be a good draw. Burns versus Masvidal, book it. As for Thompson, another guy whose title hopes went down the drain tonight. Thompson, 38. So this was probably his last chance at any sort of title run at 170. I don't think he's finished as a fighter, but I do think he's still a good fighter. Still a serviceable gatekeeper. So maybe let's take a look at who's being booked in the welterweight division. You could give him the loser. I think that's what might be next for him. Is you could book him against the loser of Chiesa and Luque. And that's what should likely be next for that's like what should be next for Stephen Thompson is the loser of Vicente Luque and Michael Chiesa. That's what should be next for Stephen Thompson. Or you could give him a guy like Bilal Muhammad if they feel Bilal is a top 5 fighter. Those are two routes you can go with Stephen Thompson. I would prefer the old Joe Silva model of loser versus loser. So the loser of Luque versus Chiesa is what should be next for Stephen Thompson. Now we go to the heavyweight bout between Tai Tuivasa against Greg Hardy. Hardy started off strong with some punches. Then Tai Tuivasa comes with a knockout and, of course, plenty of shoeys afterwards as Tuivasa gets the knockout win over Greg Hardy. Does this get Tuivasa back into the top 15? Maybe. Just maybe. But now Bam Bam's gotten his confidence back. He's won 2 in a row. No, 3 in a row. So I do think maybe a bigger name is back, is what could be next for Tai Tuivasa. Maybe the winner of, let me make sure he hasn't fought one of those fighters first. No, he's won, okay. But perhaps maybe Carlos Felipe, should he get past Andrei Arlovsky, is maybe what should be next for Tai Tuivasa. That's maybe the route you go with that. Or you could go with... Oh, he's lost to Spivak, too, so... Or you could go with Ben Rothwell. That's another possibility. I think we'll go with that. Tuivasa versus Rothwell. As for Greg Hardy, I don't care for it. I hope maybe at this point this could be the beginning of the end of Greg Hardy in the UFC. I have never honestly ever been a fan of Greg Hardy. He's a wife beater. I've never liked it. But there's certainly plenty of shit. I don't approve of Dana White doing in the UFC. And number one, probably the top of my list, is bringing Greg Hardy to the UFC. He's not a good fighter. He's showing he's not a top 15 fighter. He's lost 3 in a row. And I really don't find him that he's he's lost 2 in a row. He's lost to Tybura, he's lost to Tuivasa. His best win is against Maurice Green. That tells you something. So I suppose you give him a fight against Walt Harris. That's what should be next. The loser of the fight gets a pink slip. That's what should be next. But honestly, if you want to do the fans a good and do us right, please cut him. I don't care. If he's cut, I would be happy if Greg Hardy's cut. I do not like him. He's a piece of shit. I think, but hopefully maybe if he's not going to be cut, you give him a fight against Walt Harris, and hopefully Walt Harris will beat him up bad enough that you do get rid of Greg Hardy. That's what should be next. Fight before that, Irene Aldana beats Yuna Kunitskaya via TKO in the first round. Irene Aldana, they were ranked 4 and 5. There you are, women's bantamweight. Aldana, ranked 4 and 5. What could be next for Aldana? You could give her Holly Holm. I don't know if she and Aldana now 13 and 6. Okay, she's lost to Holly Holm. Never mind that. But could give her, say, okay, maybe give her Jermaine Day Randomy. That's what will. She hasn't fought Jermaine Day Randomy. It's not going to be that great of a matchup, but unfortunately, women's 135, there's not a lot of great matchups. You can really do a lot of pairings when you're in the top 5. So, Day Randomy versus Aldana by default, shall I say. Kunitskaya now falls to 14 and 6. Another gatekeeper in the women's 135. I think you've just, I don't know, she fought Ladd. Yeah, and she's lost to Aspen Ladd, so see what other fighters are coming off a loss. Probably the loser of Pennington and the loser of Vieira McMahon is maybe plausible. No, she's beaten Vieira. They've fought before. Maybe Pennington, the loser, Pennington, Kianzad. Okay, that's a fresh matchup. The loser of Pennington and Kianzad is what should be next for Yana Kunitskaya. And we go to the Bantamweight, the first event of the night where Sean O'Malley obliterates Chris Martino. Nothing to really see here. O'Malley dominates. Maybe a return to top 15 fighters is what should be next for Sean O'Malley. Now that he's rattled off a couple of wins. I say a fight with Timur Valiev is what should be next for Sugar Sean O'Malley. Valiev, a very underrated fighter, coming off a big win against Valiev, of course, coming off a big win against Rayoni Barcelos. So I think Valiev and O'Malley makes a lot of sense at this point. And as for Mountino, just book him against Louis Smolka. A for effort. The guy just hanging in there as long as he did against Sugar Sean O'Malley, even though he's getting obliterated. That was, a moral victory. You don't get too many moral victories in the UFC, but this was one of the few times where, yeah, you got a moral victory. So I think you just give him Louis Smolka. Louis Smolka, not that great of a fighter, so put those two together and good luck. All right, the main event of the prelim card on ESPN. Max Griffin beats Carlos Condit. What should be next for Max Griffin? And he's won 3 in a row now. Griffin, definitely an entertaining fighter. Probably a fighter that's not ever going to win a belt. But definitely an entertaining undercard guy. I think you book him against Jeremiah Wells. That would be a very fun fight. Wells coming off a big upset of Warley Alves, so that would be a very fun fight. Griffin versus Wells. So back to gatekeeping duties for Max Griffin. As for Carlos Condit, this 14th loss, I really would wish Condit would just hang it up. I just don't feel like there's a need for Carlos Condit to keep fighting in the UFC. So I think the best course of action for Carlos Condit is retirement. Just hang it up, Carlos. He's a great fighter. He won an interim belt, but he keeps ruining his legacy by continuing to fight. And I really have no interest in seeing Carlos Condit fight anymore. So call it a career. That's what should be next for Carlos Condit. Fight before that, Michael Pereira beats Nico Price via unanimous decision. Two fighters with very low fight IQs. As Pereira nearly finished Price, but he let Price kind of back in the fight in the third round. Pereira now 26-11. But fun fight between two fighters that don't exactly have great fight IQ in the octagon. What should be next for Pereira? Pereira ranked 21st. So I think Muslim Salikov is what should be next for Pereira. As for Nico Price, I think a fight with Eliseu Zaleski is what should be next. Nico Price, another one that just does not, always entertaining, but kind of just lacks the fight IQ in the UFC. And Ilya Topuria beats Ryan Hall, as this was one where very, very unusual, a lot of rolls in this one by Ryan Hall, but Topuria was not fooled. He became predictable, and Topuria gets the finish. Big win for Topuria against a fighter nobody really wants to fight, so I do think Topuria should get a top 15 fighter next. El Matador now 11-0 in the UFC. Currently ranked 20. And I think his next fighter should be against a top 15 opponent. I think that should be Shane Burgos. Burgos would be a good test for Topuria. If he gets past Shane Burgos, then he's officially a top 15 fighter. As for Ryan Hall, this was a little bit of a surprise to see Hall lose. Hopefully he can get a fight faster than he's gotten recently. Maybe a fight with Hakeem Dawodu is maybe what should be next for Ryan Hall. Hall still got a great wrestling, but he just got outsmarted this one. And in the opener of the ESPN prelim cards, Dricus du Plessis beats Trevin Giles via TKO. Good win for du Plessis. Now on a 4-fight winning streak in the he is now 2-0 in the UFC. And I think next for him should be a fight with Eric Anders. Eric Anders is a good low-level gatekeeper. If du Plessis can get past Eric Anders, or actually, Julian Marquez would be a good one, too. We'll go with Julian Marquez. If du Plessis can get past Marquez, then that would probably mean that du Plessis might be ready for top 15 competition. As for Trevin Giles, he snaps a 3-fight winning streak. What should be next for him is maybe a fight with Andrew Sanchez is what should be next for Houston police officer and Trevin Giles. And on to the early prelims. Jennifer Maia beats Jessica Ai. Jennifer Maia approaching a title shot at women's 125. Let's make sure. Currently ranked number 4. She has lost to Chukagian and Shevchenko. So I'll take that back. She's more of a gatekeeper. So that probably leaves her with Jessica Andrade as her next opponent. As for Jessica Ai, After a bit of a medical suspension for Jessica Ai, her next fight should be against well, she's now 1 and not exactly a great spot, 1-4 in her last 5, which could leave her in jeopardy in her next fight. Since it is women's 125, she might get one more opportunity to get back in the win column, but maybe at this point, maybe another promotion is what could be next for Jessica Ai. But her next fight opponent should be another fighter on a losing streak. And we'll go with Jillian Roberson. If she loses to Roberson, cut her. And in the next bout before that, Brad Tavares beats Amari Akhmedov via split decision. Tavares winning 2 in a row. What should be next for Brad Tavares? I think next for Brad Tavares is a fight against I think we go with Andre Muniz is what should be next for Brad Tavares. Amari Akhmedov, who's alternated wins and losses. Maybe his next fight should be against Edmund Shabazian. And in the opener, Zaglas Zumagula beats Jerome Rivera. Zamagulov now 14-5 in his MMA career. Currently ranked 18. I think a fight with Matthews Nicolau is what should be next. And as for Jerome Rivera, I think unemployment is what is likely next for him. And that will put a bow on UFC 264. Next week, we go back to the Apex for UFC Fight Night. Makhachev versus Moises. We have Islam Makhachev versus Thiago Moises. Marion Renault versus Misha Tate. Jeremy Stevens against Matsus Gamrot. Khalid Taha versus Sergey Morozov. Billy Quarantillo returns against Gabriel Benitez. And plenty of other things. I'll be back tomorrow to talk some NFL. Everybody have a great week. Everybody stay cool, stay hydrated if you're out on the West Coast. Take care of yourselves, stay awesome. And have a good night, everybody.